What's up, my fellow adult collector, and welcome to SeViLion Collectibles. In this video, I'm going to be talking about the recently released Mezco Toys 112 Collective Christopher Reeve Superman based on his appearance in the 1978 film. Typically, I don't like to spend a whole lot of time on the packaging itself, but this one does deserve a little more attention simply because it's a metal tin instead of a cardboard box. With that shown though, now I'll get on to the figure itself. For those who may not be aware, this is my first ever Mezco 112 figure. While I have been somewhat interested in it in the past, I just didn't like the promotional images enough to go ahead and pull the trigger. However, with this being Christopher Reeve Superman, I decided it was time to go ahead and check it out for myself. If you've been following my channel for a while, you'll probably notice a difference in my format for this video. However, if this is your first time on my channel, hi, my name is SeViL, and here I'd like to discuss action figures and other collectibles based on my favorite movies, TV shows, and video games. If you find this video enjoyable or informative, please give me a thumbs up, don't forget to subscribe, and hit that notification bell. So, right off the bat, I'm going to go ahead and tell you that I'm giving this figure a 6 out of 10 star rating, meaning it's still awesome and worth owning for casual fans of the character. Now, whether you agree or disagree with my score, I do ask that you at least hear me out, because I do have my reasons, both positive and negative. The number one negative component is that the figure was pretty expensive. $125 retail, plus shipping and taxes, made it well over $100, and I honestly don't think any 6-inch figure should ever be over $100, at least not by that much. The next issue is accessibility. If you missed the initial pre-order window, which in some cases was only hours, then you're just out of luck, or you'll be paying even more on the secondhand market. On the plus side though, the figure itself does look pretty good, especially when positioned properly in Superman's iconic poses. It's a little bit difficult to talk about the level of detail in the sculpt, because so much of the body is hidden underneath the cloth goods suit, but what you can see in the face, and the hands, and the boots is pretty well done. The problem with the boots though is that the color red does not match with the rest of the suit at all. In comparison to the cape and trunks, they don't remind me of the first movie. Instead, they remind me of the drunk evil Superman from Part 3. This is a primary reason I decided to go ahead and dock the accuracy, because this really should have been corrected. It should have been the exact same shiny red color. The other thing really might just be me, but I feel like the S on the front of the suit just isn't quite right. Like, it's not quite straight in some places. It's placed weird on the suit, and it should be a little bit wider. In my opinion, the S on the back of the cape is actually a lot more accurate and comes out much cleaner. Even though this won't be visible with the cape down most of the time, I did want to point out that the thread lines on the back of the suit really just look severely out of place. I wish there would be some way that could be done better. Beyond that, as far as the uniqueness is concerned, I personally have no way of knowing whether or not anything under the suit was reused for this figure from previous figures, so on that point, it gets a pass. One of the best features of this package as a whole is the sheer amount of accessories you get with it. For instance, there's this flight stand and a slew of extra hands. On top of that, there's some kryptonite pieces and crystals for the fortress. Was it weird to anyone else that the primary crystal was green like kryptonite, or is that just me? Anyway, along with the green one, there's also 2 clear ones. Wait, hang on. Now you can see them better. Also, there's tiny little magnets on the bottom ends of each one, which I'll explain what that's for later on. Along with the primary head that you've already seen, there's also 2 additional head sculpts. The first one, I don't really like. It's supposed to be a smiling, toothy grin, but it just looks really weird to me. The next one is actually my favorite sculpt of all 3 heads. It's a little bit of a smirk, but to me, this captures the essence of Christopher Reeve just about perfectly. Saving the best accessory for last, here is the Fortress of Solitude control console. When I first saw the reveal and promotional images for this figure, this fortress piece is actually the main driving force that pushed me to go ahead and press the pre-order button. It looks great. It's sculpted very, very well, and what the images didn't show is that it will light up. It has 3 different modes. The first is obviously just totally off, but the other 2 are either on all the time or on when you have the crystal in place. That's actually what the little magnet on the bottom of the crystals are for that I was talking about earlier. Just so you can see how bright this thing really is, all other lights in my recording office are turned off. This is lighting up the entire space by itself. For anyone who's into action figure photography, I'm sure you can use this piece to come up with some really cool shots. With all the accessories covered now, that point is most definitely earned. Next up, I'm going to run through the articulation. It does seem a little weird to me just because you can't really see it underneath the suit, but I'll name off all the points as we go down the body. First up, the head and base of the neck have their own individual points, which creates a wide array of tilting up, down, sideways, and moving around. The shoulders do spin all the way around as well as move outward, but the suit can start to restrict it once you get around so far. The biceps do have full rotation, the elbows are double jointed, and the wrists also have full rotation as well as the pegs for up and down movement. The torso is on two separate ball joints, one just underneath the chest and one in the waistline for full 360 rotation at both pieces. Real quick, I do want to point out that Superman can balance really well because he is holding this super kick position entirely by himself. Back to articulation though, the hips can spread out pretty far, there is thigh cut rotation, the knees are double jointed, and there is rotation at the top of the boots, plus the ankles have a pretty good range of pivot motion. Also, I do want to point out that the cape is wired around the edges, so it can be repurposed for different poses. So as far as articulation is concerned, that point is also most definitely earned. Before I get into the comparison segment, I do want to point out that I haven't really had anything that I would consider to be quality control problems with my particular figure. With that said, here is the Mezco Superman next to the Mattel Classic version and the Rebirth version. Next up is the McFarlane Toys Action Comics 1000 Superman, and then the Infected Superman. And just because, here's the Storm Collectibles Injustice Doomsday. The closest one-on-one comparison though should probably be the NECA version of Christopher Reeve. I do think that both of them have their various pros and cons. Like to me, the S on the NECA version looks a little bit better, but his arms are kind of small and the face sculpt isn't quite right. The main problem I have with the Mezco Superman is really the problem I have with all of Mezco. I just don't think that cloth goods work that well at this scale. I personally think that when it comes to full costumes, cloth goods should be reserved for 1/6 scale figures such as Hot Toys. At that scale, the suit is just more form-fitting, the individual threads don't look as big in comparison to it. In my opinion, the Mezco Superman just comes out looking more like he's wearing sweatpants or pajamas rather than spandex that's supposed to be form-fitting. With that being the case, it's hard for me to justify the price of the Mezco in comparison to the price of the Hot Toys because it was only $100 more with a very similar array of accessories but twice the size of the figure. With the Hot Toys, it doesn't really matter what pose you put them in, the suit itself never really loses that form-fitting nature. But with the Mezco, it most certainly does. Before I had mine, there was a slew of terrible pictures just showing you how bad it could be if not posed properly. Therefore, the fourth point I took off is for the proportion of the suit itself. So, while I don't necessarily regret my purchase decision of this Mezco Superman, unfortunately, it has failed to convince me to purchase future Mezco figures.